Joe Dumars and the New Orleans Pelicans just made one thing obviously clear, and that is Zion Williamson is not going to be traded this offseason, which puts more pressure on the Pelicans to find a direction this offseason. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about the offseason outlook of the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll talk about all that plus more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And we've been going team by team for teams that did not make the play-in or the playoffs and giving their off-season outlook. And today, we're going to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, the Pelicans are in an interesting place, right? Because you have players on this roster that undoubtedly are solid players. You have Trey Murphy III, Zion Williamson, Jeremiah Fears, who showed a lot last year, Derek Queen, who was a really, exciting rookie, even though down the stretch of the season, some things may have gone a little bit left for him, Yves Missy, other players. There are a lot of players on this team that I think are going to be really good players. But yet, for all that, the Pelicans ended up with 26 wins last year. And so that's naturally led a lot of people to ask the question of, could Zion Williamson be moved by the New Orleans Pelicans? That was something that was hot at the trade deadline as well. A lot of teams talking about the outlook of Zion. And, at one point there were some rumors that the Pelicans may have to, settle for, second round picks and matching salary for Zion. But as it stands right now, Joe Dumars has made his stance clear on Zion Williams, saying this: we have no intentions of doing that. That's what we look forward to working with him next year. That's about as plain of a statement as you can make. Zion Williamson, for what it's worth, last season played 62 games last year. He averaged 21 points, 5.7 rebounds, 3.2 assists, and he did that in 29 minutes per game. It's really good. After playing only 30 games in the 2024-25 season and 70 games in the 2023-24 season, this is the healthiest season that Zion had for a while, right? But the thing is always overarching with Zion is that how healthy is he going to maintain? And with the Pelicans having that opt-out clause in every summer of his deal, if he does not meet certain requirements, there's always that question on what the Pelicans are going to do with Zion. So the first thing in this offseason outlook that we're going to talk about for the Pelicans is just that. Should they be looking to move Zion Williamson? And the question when it comes down to that is, we know what Zion is when he's on the basketball court. There's just no doubt how good, how transcendent, how good of a player he is when he's able to be on the basketball court. But the problem is that how much can you bet on him to do that? Now, the benefit of it as well is that, the Pelicans have slowly but surely started acquiring some nice young assets on this team that actually make a lot of sense for them, to hold on to, and they built a team that's really good enough. Like when you look at it, Jeremiah Fears, 19 years old, Yves Missy, 21 years old, Derek Queen, 21. Even when you get to the player like Trey Murphy, 25 years old, not over the hill or anything like that at all. But then you have the mix of older players. You have Jordan Poole, who's still 26, right? Which is still, young in life, but there's been some questions about him. You have DeJounte Murray at 29 years old, Herb Jones at 27. So the question becomes about what do they do with this roster going forward, right? And that is made a little bit more murky by Zion. It was clear that Zion and Derek Queen just did not fit very well on the court together. Now, could that change with them having an offseason and stuff of getting it together and stuff like that and knowing how they need to? They can. But for what it's worth, the first part of this offseason outlook is the Zion Williamson of it all. Now, the Pelicans are announcing right now that they do not plan on trading him. Even with that said, that's what you should say, even if you do want to move him, because it's going to help you get potentially the most back for him. So that makes sense to say one way or another, no matter what your true intentions are, but it still raises some questions in regards to that, right? But then you look at also their draft assets. Now, the Pelicans actually have control of all their own draft picks except the one that they traded to get Derek Queen. They traded it, so now this year's pick is going to go to Atlanta. And the unfortunate part about that is that this is an extremely deep draft. That pick has the seventh best odds to land the number one overall pick, and that's going to go to Atlanta one way or another. The fact that they didn't put any protections at all on that pick either says that that's how highly they view Derek Queen and how much they view him as a chance to be a transcendent star on that team. And I think if you give an unprotected first-round pick with the deepest draft in years coming up the next season, and it's the deepest draft in years coming up, that says to me that you believe that much in Derek Queen, right? But for what it's worth, you basically gift-wrapped the Atlanta Hawks a top 10 pick that has a 29% chance at the number 4 overall pick and a 6.8% chance at the number, a 29.3% chance at the top 4 pick and a 6.8% chance at the number 1 overall pick. You just handed that to the Atlanta Hawks, right? A team that is also in the playoffs, right? So look out for that. So that's the part that you have to ask yourself now with this Pelicans team, and it just makes their offseason outlook even that much more confusing, right? But for what it's worth, Joe Dumars may have thrown some hint out there that they probably going to be willing and dealing on the draft, saying this. Dumars says the Pelicans do have the chance of moving into the first round of this year's draft if they wanted to. What does that mean, right? Does that mean that, you're going to have to trade to get into it, right? So does that mean that Joe Dumars is looking at that young bevy of players that we just talked about, or even if it is a Herb Jones or somebody like that, and you're looking at that and thinking that that's going to be enough to get you into the first round of this draft? Now, where do you pick in at the first round? I think we're going to have to wait till after the lottery to really see that. You look at some of these teams that could be looking for win-now talent that can actually help them win some basketball games. You look at, for example, the 17th pick, that's going to Charlotte. That came from Phoenix. Charlotte, who's having, a great season this year and could very well, see what they do in the playoffs, but could they be more so looking for win-now talent, right? Could they do that? You have also Atlanta's pick that's just going to the San Antonio Spurs. Could they be looking more for win-now talent than adding another young piece to an already young core that you can move one of those players off of? And that's the question that you have there, and that would make some sense. There's going to be one of these teams that has a first-round pick that's probably going to value more getting a proven commodity than another teenager that may have to develop and things like that. So that's a chance and opportunity that's going to be here. If Joe Dumars is able to land and pick anywhere in the first round and hit on that pick, it lessens the blow of giving up that unprotected pick to Atlanta, but I'm sure Pelicans fans are hoping that that's going to come. But then let's get into this situation with coaching, right? So then you also have that question with there. And it came out yesterday that the Pelicans are going to have a coaching search at the end of the season, which makes sense. They're going to open up that coaching search. They're also going to include intern coach James Borrego as a candidate in there, so he's going to have an opportunity to pitch himself. The way that I look at it and say, if a coach is already coached for you, even on an intern basis, and you still open up a coaching search, that tells me that there's something there that you don't believe in that guy, but you still have a coaching situation to get to as well. Now, Brett Siegel, in regards to, talked about this situation. Brett Siegel said this: although Splitter's future and that of the Trailblazers as a whole under new owner Tom Dudon is unclear, Borrego has earned a lot of respect from the Pelicans front office and the roster as a whole. While he may not return as the head coach of the team, there's strong reason to believe team governor Gail Benson and EVP Joe Dumars will keep Borrego around in a different role. Okay, so cool. You get the guy that played a lot of these young players this season. They got to see their development, oversee that as a guy that's going to be making some decisions for you, possibly on your roster going forward. Not bad, right? But then you have to get into this situation with the Pelicans and look at the Pelicans' outlook. So this is what we've been doing with all these teams, is looking at their outlook, looking at the assets. So entering the offseason of 2026, New Orleans Pelicans are extremely tight right now, right? They sit right at the luxury tax threshold. They have about $6 million below that luxury tax, but they have the player option of Kevon Looney that can push you over that or keep you below that when it comes down to it. You have high-priced players on your team like Zion Williamson, DeJounte Murray, Jordan Poole, which all those guys are making really solid money when it comes down to it. You look at, for example, you look at Zion Williamson's contract, $39 million. Jordan Poole, $31 million. DeJounte Murray, $30 million. So you have over $100 million just between those three guys on your roster. That's not even mentioning Trey Murphy with his $25 million, $27 million actually next season. And I was wrong. Zion's actually making $42 million. I was looking at this season's number. $42 million next season for Zion, $34 million for Jordan Poole, $32 million for DeJounte Murray. That's well over $100 million just for those players. You add in Trey Murphy and his $27 million and Herb Jones with his $14 million. And so that's why the Pelicans face such a tight financial situation where they really don't have much wiggle room to really add any type of talent to that. And who would sign with the Pelicans anyway, right? So when you look at that, they have an estimated salary of $196 million if all options are exercised, which puts them right in the first apron category for a team that just won 26 games, right? Then you look at it. They're limited to the non-taxpayer mid-level exception unless they shed some salary, which they could try to trade Jordan Poole's salary to a team that can absorb that, but then you're going to have to send out a future asset to get a team to do that, right? And so that's a question when it comes down to all of this as well. And then your core pieces all have basically extensions when it comes down to it. If they turn down Kevon Looney's $8 million team option, it helps them at least get below the luxury tax but they still have no room to really do any other type of flexibility. So when you look at all the stuff with the Pelicans, they aren't benefiting from how bad their team was this year because they don't have their own draft pick. That's going to Atlanta. That gets a benefit from that. They don't have a lot of, mobility to make trades because, their players aren't really desirable unless you're talking about Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, which you very well could. But DeJounte Murray, I do think DeJounte's played pretty solidly, this season when he's been there. He's gotten back healthy. So could you very well try to move DeJounte Murray to one of those win-now teams? You could. I mean, he only played 14 games, but he averages 16 points, 5.4 rebounds, 6.4 assists, 1.6 steals. Like, DeJounte Murray is still that player that can average a near triple-double. So if you can move off of that contract, that provides you tons of wiggle room, especially if you go to a team that either has a trade exception, a matching bad salary or something like that. You can gain a first-round pick. You, of course, have Saddiq Bey you got to make a decision on as well. Saddiq Bey played pretty well for you. He was your third leading scorer on this season, so you have that to ask a question about as well. So you have a lot of things with the Pelicans that are up in air, but it's a good problem to have in the sense that, maybe you can convince some players or some teams to take one of those players. DeJounte Murray is a player that can still help some teams. You look at Jordan Poole, who you would like to think that teams could be interested in, but he only played 39 games and averaged 13.4 points this season. So, with his crazy-ass contract, you're probably not going to be able to move that. So the Pelicans sit in a place where a lot of teams find themselves, and that's in the sense that your financial situation, just as it stands right now, is way too tight and way too tough. Now, the benefit of it is that the Pelicans do have some money coming off the books over the next couple of years. In the summer of 2027, they actually can have $66 million below the first tax apron, depending on what they do in the roster decisions that they can make. If they can shed any of those other salaries that go past that, then you're gaining even more, financial flexibility if that ends up being the case, which Jordan Poole, his contract ends at the end of next season. So an expiring $34 million contract, maybe you can get a team to bite on that because it is expiring. DeJounte Murray has a player option for the 2027-28 season. He's likely to pick up because of the injuries and in the time that he missed. So could you get a team to bite on that? So that's what you have to do. The Pelicans right now, as far as next season, don't have the greatest outlook unless they're willing to move off some assets. Herb Jones has been really good for them. He's 27 years old. He can help a team win now. So if you can move Herb Jones and get a late to mid first round pick to do that from a team that may value the player over the prospect of the pick, that would be the best case scenario for the Pelicans. So going back to Joe Dumars' confidence that they can get back into the first round if they want to, I could see where that confidence is coming from, but you still have to execute it, right? And that's the question that you have there. Now, they do have future control over the Milwaukee Bucks picks as well. They have advantages in the 2027 draft also. So the Pelicans' future, as far as long-term future, isn't as bleak as some people will make it out to be. But in the short term, in this offseason, because that's what this is about, this is the 2026 offseason outlook for the New Orleans Pelicans. It's just not in a good space right now. You're going to be $61 million, over the salary cap, with about $6 million wiggle room under the first tax apron if you don't pick up Kevon Looney's option. And that just leaves you in a place where you don't really have a lot of options to do here. And that may be best. I want to be clear that the benefit of the Pelicans overall is how young so much of their roster is, right? And how good some of those young players are. Trey Murphy is a legit stud. 21 points per game last year, technically led the team in scoring slightly over Zion, even though he only played 66 games. You have Jeremiah Fears that played all 82 games. He averaged 14 points per game. Love that. You have Derek Queen. No matter how his season ended, Derek Queen still is a promising rookie going into his second year. You still have that, right? So you have players on this team that do have some promise. Yves Missi as a role player and a role-playing big man only averaged about 20 minutes per game, but defensively, it's still pretty damn solid. The advanced numbers look favorably upon Yves Missi. So you have that aspect of it. So, the long-term future, I would not be surprised if Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, Trey Murphy, if those players end up forming a nice young core. I wouldn't be surprised with that. But as far as clearing out some of the stuff, it just seems like it's going to be an offseason and another year before the Pelicans really gain some flexibility with their roster. But luckily, unlike some teams, they have all control over their future first-round picks, which is a great place to be in because not a lot of teams can be able to say that. They own all their own first-round picks outright. That's an excellent place to be in. And now you just get to make some decisions on what else is coming for your team. So let me know down below, what do you guys think about the offseason outlook for the New Orleans Pelicans? Is their choice to keep Zion Williamson really worth it? Is that worth it for this team, or should they be looking to trade him, DeJounte, maybe Herb Jones, maybe Jordan Poole as an expiring contract? Let me know what you guys think on all of that down below, if they're making the right call on Zion. Otherwise, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. You can follow us at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. NBA Central Pod at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything NBA and basketball related. And I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Prior tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.